Do your string bends sound off? Maybe they're out of tune, too quick, too weak, or maybe you're just not sure which notes to bend at all. String bending is one of the most expressive tools that a guitarist has, and when it's done wrong, it ruins solos faster than almost anything else. So in this video, I'll show you how to bend with confidence and control. You'll learn which notes to bend and which notes to avoid, how to nail pitch every time, and the pro techniques that took me years to figure out. These are the same tips that I have taught thousands of one-on-one clients over the years to help bring their solos to the next level. There's a free PDF and backing track linked below so that you can practice everything from this lesson. Bending basics. Hit the right notes. So bending isn't just pushing the string and hoping for the best. It's about targeting a specific pitch, usually the next note in the scale. Bending to the wrong note is the number one reason that solos sound sour. Here's a simple way to check if a bend will work. So if you're using shape number 1 of the pentatonic, look at shape number 2. If the next note on that string is 2 frets higher, you can bend it. If it's 3 frets higher, don't bend it. That bend will usually be out of tune and is very hard to control. So you can see from the diagram that the great bending notes in shape number 1 are the high E string, the B string, the G string, and the low E string. You want to avoid bends where the next note is 3 frets higher, unless you're intentionally going for that stretch. It's really hard to bend that far, and you rarely hear the pros do it. Here's a pro tip. So the G string in shape number 1 is special because of the extra blues scale note. This means that I can bend this note up 1 fret or 2 frets, or really anywhere in between. This means that bending this note, it doesn't have to be as accurate, and it makes it more expressive because you have all of these options. So to sum up, my good bending notes on shape number 1 of the pentatonic scale are the low E string, the G string, which I can bend a half step or a whole step, the B string, and the high E string. Here's what those bends sound like in context. So let's repeat the same logic for shape number 4 by referencing shape number 5. So you can see from the diagram the notes on the low E, the A, the B, and the high E string will make good bending notes, while the G and D strings would be 3 fret bends. So I suggest you avoid those 2 strings. So here on shape 4, the B string is the MVP because, again, this extra blues scale note gives us the ability to bend a half step, a whole step, or anywhere in between. Now, the most common mistake that I see people make on this shape is bending the G string and landing flat because the next note is 3 frets higher, not 2 frets higher. Here's what those bends sound like in context. key takeaway is to always know your destination before you bend. To start, you may want to play the target note first and then aim for it. Bending technique that works. So here's how to make your bends powerful, in tune, and smooth. So use 3 or 4 fingers. While you can bend with one finger, it takes a lot of strength and is quite rare. So use multiple fingers for power and leverage. Place your finger right up to the fret. So having strong contact between the string and the fret will make your bends smoother with much less fret buzz. Notice my fingers all the way against the fret metal. Stabilize your guitar. So this is a big one that I rarely hear anyone talk about. If your headstock is moving, your bends will probably be inconsistent. Hitting the right pitch will be like hitting a moving target. So you want to hold the body of the guitar steady with your picking arm and use your fretting hand thumb to push down for leverage. So watch, my headstock barely moves when I bend, and that's what you want. How to mute while you bend. So one of the trickier aspects of bending is muting all of the adjacent strings so that they don't ring. So here's how to silence the chaos. First, keep your fretting hand fairly flat. So you want your index finger to rest lightly on the higher strings to mute them out. So for instance, if I'm bending the G string, I want my index finger to lay over the B and E strings to mute them out. The second way of muting is touching the string above the string that you are bending. So in this example, if we're bending the G string, then the tip of our index finger should touch the D string to mute it. So this is pretty important because as you bend the G string, you will have to push the D string up a little bit too. So when you release the bend, it is quite easy to accidentally sound the D string. And this is probably the mistake I see people make more than any other. If your index finger is touching the D string, just touching the side of the D string, then when you release the bend, you won't sound that note. So instead of this, if my index finger is touching the D string, then when I release the bend, the D string won't sound. And the third way that we're muting is by resting our picking hand on the low strings to mute them. You're aiming for this. The only thing ringing out is the note that you're bending. Everything else is silent. So just know that this is tricky. So don't get discouraged if your bends are noisy to begin with. So even after 40 years, I still get frustrated dialing in the perfect bend. That's just part of the craft. The 4 most useful bends. So here are the 4 bend types that every player should master. Bend and release. So here we bend up to a note and then let it fall back. You'll hear the pitch go up and then come back down. And this is the bend that most people start with. Bend and mute. So here we bend up and then stop the note with your picking hand or your fretting hand. With this bend, you'll hear the pitch go up, but you won't hear it come back down. This is a bend often used by pros that is easy to overlook. The pre-bend and release. So this one's sneaky. So you bend before picking so that you don't hear the note go up, but you only hear it come down. This is great for really dramatic phrasing. And last is the bend and hold. This is the hardest one. Since you are holding the bend, it's even more important that the bend is really in tune. Once you've mastered this bend, the next step is adding vibrato to it. And this is one of the hardest techniques to control on the guitar. So to do it right, we're going to bend up to pitch and then slightly release and rebend it in a steady motion. We want the vibrato to go slightly flat and then come back up to pitch. Don't just shake your finger randomly. Try to keep it even like a sine wave. So one of my favorite guitarists, blues great Robin Ford, he never holds a bend. But another of my favorites, David Gilmour, is known for how he holds a bend. I encourage you to experiment with this bend, but be kind to yourself. It took me a long time before I had really good control over holding bends. Here's what those 4 types of bends sound like in context. First, the bend and release. Now the bend of mute. So notice you heard the pitch go up but not come back down. So now the pre-bend and release. Now the bend hold. Bend hold with vibrato. Bending exercises that work. So I want to show you 2 simple drills to improve your pitch and control fast. So we're going to do these drills with a backing track so that you can really hear the bends in context. So exercise 1 is pitch matching. So you want to play the note that you want to bend to and then bend up to it by ear. We're trying to get those to match. So exercise number 2 is focusing on the speed of the bends. So it's easier to do a fast bend than a slow bend. So I want to slow the bend down a little bit, but still make it to pitch. And then just keep gradually slowing that bend down. You want to have good control over the speed of your bends because that really helps to make your solos more expressive. Pro level bends you've heard before. So let's look at some of the specialty bends that you've heard on classic records. The train bend. So for this bend, we're bending one string while holding a higher string in place so that these 2 notes rub together. So this is often used in country music to kind of mimic the sound of a pedal steel. And it's used by rock players because it sounds explosive through overdrive. So if you listen closely, you'll hear the pitch of the bend go up, while at the same time there are some harmonic overtones that go down in pitch. The unison bend. So this one is similar to the train bend in that we are bending one string while holding a higher string in place. But we will be holding the note on the higher string that we will be bending the note on the lower string to. So in other words, when the bend gets to pitch, the 2 strings will be in unison. They will be the same pitch. So this was a favorite of Jimi Hendrix. Hendrix bend. So speaking of Hendrix, this wild sounding bend was often used by Hendrix. So here I'm bending up the B string, and when it's at its peak, you'll notice that the G string is also bent up. And then I'm going to roll my finger over to the G string and bring it down. So the B string goes up, and the G string comes down. The half step bend. So one last sneaky bend trick is that you can bend into any note from a half step below. So the starting pitch barely registers, just the destination. This works even if the starting note isn't technically in key. I used this bend several times in the opening clip of this video. So here's what all those specialty bends sound like in context. First, the train bend. The unison bend. The Hendrix bend. And finally, the half-step bends. Final thoughts. Bending is one of those skills that separates knowing the scale from actually sounding like a pro guitarist. It's all about control, confidence, muscle memory, and training your ear. It takes time and it takes patience. Don't let your inner critic steal your fun. You're allowed to sound messy while you get better. Grab the free PDF and backing track in the description to follow along and practice these concepts. So if you want your solos to sound smoother, more expressive, and more pro, then watch this next video here. It'll take everything that you just learned and show you how to actually use it in a solo. If this video was useful to you, please like and subscribe. It helps YouTube to show it to more players. And thanks. See you next week.